Greetings. We live in the age of uncertainty, and one can argue seriously that in the era of ambiguity and search for meaning, humanity is in desperate need for social change and societal change. And what I am talking about is humanity working towards social justice. And this sort of work has been done since the ancient times to the modern times and the present times, and down into the future it shall be done. There are many actors, politicians, leaders of various institutions, and spiritual leaders as well, who are doing this kind of work on a global level, and we hear about it. It's in our books, it's in the news all the time. But what about the local level? To what extent do we have access to the kind of work that the teachers at the local level are doing with those who've been marginalized and oppressed and pushed aside by the terms of our social contract that are indifferent to people who have to go through the suffering and the indignity of incarceration and removal of their dignity? I recently had a chance to sit down and have a conversation with such a teacher. His name is Koorosh Ostowari, a teacher of integral philosophy who has been working with the local prisoners in Northern California, doing such an important work that I think merits our attention. And I invite you to take a look at this conversation. So, Koorosh, tell me a little bit about this program you're involved with the county jail right here in Northern California.
Well, this is a program called Spirituality and Communications, and it's a course I offer at the jail, and basically I'm a facilitator of the program.
And what sort of work are you doing, and why you and not someone else?
Yeah, well, good question. So the kind of work I do basically is divided up into three areas. The main objective is to end the cycle of pain and suffering, not just for the inmates that come in and are incarcerated, but to end this cycle of suffering and pain for their families and the whole community, because everybody's impacted. And why me? I'm naturally drawn to this kind of work. I worked at the county as a mediator, dealing with the public who were in conflict for a while, and enjoyed it very much, and felt very empowered by it, and also felt great in supporting the community and solving their problems. But I also studied somatic therapy, somatic counseling, and so I worked with folks who've got trauma, and I trained at Spirit Rock Meditation Center as a Dharma leader, meditation leader, who goes out into the community and helps people gain more insight, clarity, and hopefully a process where they could release themselves from patterns and habits and suffering.
It's interesting because what you're really talking about is the philosophy of mindfulness that you want to bring for these folks. But I'm curious, because you're working with an institution that comes from above. It's a governmental institution. It's designed to incarcerate those who are deemed as not suitable for various reasons. And they're marginalized, they're in many ways oppressed, and so on. And I wonder, because you are a man of color, they've been more accepting of you coming in with this kind of a program. Do you think that because of who you are and what you look like in many ways, you can build a bridge between, say, the Caucasian population of the county jail and the African Americans and the Latinos and others? You think those are factors or not?
Well, absolutely. I think one of the greatest benefits for the population of the men and women who are incarcerated is to have someone come in who really could see and understand them on many levels, but someone who grew up in this country, like myself, and also someone who's a person of color. Being born in Iran and coming here as an immigrant, I can certainly relate to the Hispanic population, I could connect and relate to the African American population, and of course the Caucasian population. I grew up with them and went to school with them. So there is that rapport and there is that level of trust that actually is there to support our work together.
Is the institution, and by institution I don't mean necessarily the infrastructure and the hierarchy that's there with the top administrators and so on, but pretty much the rank and file, the guards, the secretaries, the people that open and close the doors, and the people that facilitate the space for you to work with these folks. Are they receptive? Do you see them as partners in the program, or is there this divide between the folks that are holding these people and people like yourself who are coming in to transform these people?
It's a good question. I mean, it is a process. I mean, it's just like working with the men and women that are in jail. I mean, we're building a relationship based on trust, based on a common objective, which is to reduce recidivism and to create a collaborative model based on dealing with these folks who are locked up as humans, and somehow move away from the model of punishment, the model of shame, blame and manipulation, or whatever it is that causes more harm and more disconnection with those citizens. They're American citizens. Most of them are. I mean, we do have some folks that aren't, but those who are locked up, so there's that human element, which everybody could come on board on and work with too.
Okay, I am drawing a picture of how this is working, but can you tell me a little more about the specifics of the program? I mean, what happens? You enter the classroom. How do you work this?
Yeah, basically there's 3 areas that I'd like to describe to you. I mean, the main goal is to increase the participants' skills, the prisoners that come to the classes, the spirituality and communication classes, to learn this, certain skills, so that they could better manage their lives and in productive ways.
Skills, what do you mean? I mean, communication skills, expression? What?
Well, basically, we the areas that we work on, there's several areas. The first area is stress management. How how can the prisoners work with the level of stress that they have, and how to skillfully, rather than going to a habituated pattern of acting out, which gets them into trouble. Acting out could be a whole variety of things. It could be unskillful communications. It could be taking certain actions that are not coming from their true essence, because in their true essence, people are not out to cause trouble. What happened was, somewhere along the line there's been a disconnect. When there's a disconnect, usually there's an acting out. So what we try to do is help them integrate, and understand not just what's going on in their head and in their mind that leads to certain actions, but to also kind of bring the body into the picture. So the somatic piece is really important. Helping them get in touch with their grief, their pain, their past traumas, feelings of abandonment, and also parts of them, the inner child that was somehow left behind, either through abuse, neglect, or some trauma. Most of these folks are traumatized. So we use a variety of tools to help them relax, so that they could come back to themselves, basically. Sort of like, I would say, coming back home to themselves. But it does require a certain level of trust and an ability, when they come to class, to feel like, wow, I'm actually being seen, and I'm actually being received. Because for the most part of their lives, a lot of these people have felt abandoned or not seen,
and not heard.
Not heard, of course.
Isn't part of your work listening and then reflectively teaching them how to listen?
Right.
Yes.
The tools that we use, which is, you know, I love the tools. I use them myself, and if you know, part of the reason I love to share them is because I find that they're very helpful. A lot of times I say, "Wow, you know, I'm just a hardware salesman. I come in and I offer these tools, and so the tools are meditation and mindfulness skills, which is the core foundation, the practice of basically cultivating the muscle of awareness, so that the prisoners can actually continue to practice learning how to be okay in the present moment, rather than getting caught in some story that takes them out into some place where they need to act out or follow a thought that has nothing to do with this moment, that you know, is either to try to cover up some pain or some place of discomfort that leads to addiction, leads to a whole variety of addictions. I mean, we deal with all kinds of folks with a whole variety of addictions to not just mind-altering substances, but we have a huge surge of white-collar criminals now who are locked up because there's an addiction to money, there's an addiction to debt, there's an addiction to all kinds of things. I mean, there's no end to it. We also use guided visualization to help the prisoners settle into places where they can imagine what the possibilities are in their lives. So through gentle, compassionate guidance, we bring them to places where they can imagine, wow, this is where I could be 5 years from now, 10 years from now. This is what would my life look like if I only had a year to live or 5 years to live. And the one other area that's really important, it's critical, is embodiment practice. Because
that's where the somatic training comes into play? Okay.
Yes. Because what happens is when we're traumatized, all of us, I don't think, you know, we're exempt from this, but any one of us who has a traumatic impact, whether it's an accident or some kind of physical abuse or verbal abuse or whatever, there tends to be this collapse or shutdown as a natural way to protect ourselves, right? It's sort of what animals do in nature, but they recover very quickly.
Yes.
But humans shut down, and unfortunately they stay shut down unless they're guided to come back into their bodies very gently and go to places where they feel the sadness, the anger, the pain, the grief, and to kind of start exploring through mindfulness, through you know, a felt sense connection. You know, we use what's called a body scan, so we help them go into different parts of the body so they could get in touch with places where they feel a lot of grief. There's a lot of grief sometimes held in their chest, a lot of times in their belly. We use, the other thing we do, you know, there's a variety of tools. And this is what I love about this program. Spirituality, it's really tailor-made to meet and fit the individual's situation. It's not it's not like one thing. That it's not just Buddhism, even though I love the teachings of the Buddha. It's whatever the prisoner's into.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned Buddhism, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I get the sense that by integrating the various techniques of therapy and teaching and regrouping and inner work and introspection that a lot of these folks have to do as a result of all this teaching, you are really appropriating Buddhist philosophy and various techniques of Buddhist practitioners into this work. Does that make sense? Is that what you're doing?
Yeah.
And so if so, this begs the question, are you making a difference? Do you see transformations taking place? How do you measure that? I mean, how does this work?
That's a very good question. Yeah. I hope so. I mean, the whole goal, my intention, is to show up, to bring the work I love, which is moving towards a state of mind and body, spirit, which leads to freedom. And that was the intention of the Buddha and of many masters. I mean, there's so many great masters. The goal is to not just end the cycle of suffering and pain for the prisoners and their families and all those that are impacted. It's to support them in not coming back, because that affects our, it affects, again, it adds to the suffering, but it's also not good for us either. I mean, we as taxpayers have to continue to pay for them to keep coming back. So these classes are designed to help the prisoners to really learn to take responsibility, to come out of the state of being victims, to finding a place where they feel empowered to take charge of the tools, or take charge of their lives by using the tools, mindfulness, inquiry practice, which is really all mindfulness and meditation is. It's just a way to inquire under deep essence, so they could remember when they get out, or even if they're locked up still, to remember when they're about to
re-enter society.
To re-enter society, or to engage in some action or speech that is unskillful. They could stop and say, whoa, wait a minute, I know if I do this, there will be unwholesome consequences. So it's that discernment that we're trying to help them get to. It's that place where they could decide, wait a minute, this may not be the best decision. And it's a practice. It's sort of like going to the gym. It's cultivating the muscle of awareness so that they could learn to be so present with themselves that they're less likely to go off and do things that get them into trouble.
Right. So in some ways it breaks the cycle of re-victimizing the self and returning to that place of indignity and as I said earlier, marginalization. That it's recursive in some ways. Do you do a lot of physical training with them, or is it a combination of, do you do dance work, theater work, anything like that?
It's what I love about the spirituality program, and by the way, I want to get into the communication part too, but the spirituality program offers a variety of tools. We don't just sit and meditate in stillness and silence. We don't just practice, we're going to be aware of when we walk and eat and stuff like that. But we also do something very important, which hardly any of them have done, which is to play. We do theater games sometimes. We do improvisational games where we take an imaginary ball and we make sounds and we throw it to one another, because we realize when they're having fun and when they're laughing and there's joy, they could most often remember where the joy is, and they could come back to it more and more. And what that does is it opens up their capacity to remember, wow, this is how I felt when I was a kid. And this is normal. This is natural. I don't need to stay stuck in suffering. So anything to help them come back to their body with joy and compassion is my intention.
What about the communication part?
That's a very, very important component, because as you know, in our society, we don't have that many good models of skillful communications. I've decided to really put a lot of emphasis on skillful communications, because as you know, as we all know, poor speech, untimely speech, gossip, chatter, reactivity in our speech, tone, or using certain strategies of manipulation through speech is very, very damaging. From the top all the way down to the bottom. From our politicians, who sometimes are very unskillful, all the way down to the guy who is, you accidentally cross their path and they start yelling and screaming, or they may even take an action and do something harmful.
Where do you see this going? Do you think that you'll be able to get to a place where you can expand this program? Because it's quite unique, at least to my knowledge. Expand it to become regional and perhaps statewide and national, international. Sky's the limit in many ways. Do you see that happening? Is that a possibility?
I hope that as enough people start feeling the benefits of practicing compassionate awareness, not just in the jail, but hopefully outside of the jail when the prisoners are released, when everybody feels the benefits of us being kind, compassionate, resourceful, empowered, that people will naturally inquire and say, wow, this is powerful stuff. And so I hope that I can, and there are programs out there. There's plenty of great programs or meditation programs and whatnot. But what I would love to see is more collaboration with other institutions. I would like to see myself and other teachers come together more often as a community and see how we could work together as a team. We're a little bit isolated right now. I mean, I'm the only one doing this in our facility. And I would like to reach out to other folks, but it's been challenging. Everybody's running fast. It could be a very stressful, occupation.
Yes.
So we're also learning to take care of ourselves in the process, because it's easy to do too much, and then we go back into that cycle of enabling and and that requires balance.
That's right, because teaching is learning, and we are part of the process. Well, Koorosh, thank you for being here and sharing.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.